Welcome to Six Figure Souls Doing Good and Making Money, the weekly podcast where I highlight entrepreneurs who have left the grind and designed their business in alignment with who they are. This is a very special season 9 where I'm interviewing the co-authors of our third collaborative book in the Ultimate Guide series called Leaving Your Legacy. I'm your host, Camille Miller. Known as business strategist and life accelerator, I'm founder of the Natural Life Business Partnership and the Soul Professional Society. Today, I have with me two people in our studio, a husband and wife team that both were co-authors in our book. First, I'll introduce Claudia Haller. Her chapter is Life Unchained, Thriving When Diagnosed with ADHD. She is also a board certified health and wellness coach and certified havening practitioner. I will mention that this is Claudia's third book with us, but this time she also brought her husband, John Haller, and his chapter is called Relentless Authenticity. We all leave a legacy. Why not max yours out? Thank you both for joining me.
Thank you so much.
Good to be here, Camille.
Excellent. So first we're going to jump in because I decided to interview two of you guys together because you both come at it from very different perspectives, because Claudia has been with us this is our third book. And John, you just decided to join us in this leadership piece, and your chapter was very inspiring. It really was. Both of your chapters were, but I've read Claudia's great work before. So we'll start with Claudia, and I'm going to ask, what was it like to write for the third time and be a part of this? Like, why did you decide to be in Leaving Your Legacy?
Well, the first two chapters were a really great experience with, doing this within a group. And especially I was always afraid to write anything really, because we didn't have the greatest teachers. I remember one of my pieces that I wrote came back with just all like red marks and commas all in the wrong places. So I thought like writing is not for me. So when I joined that very first time and I held that book in my hands, I was just so proud. And I was like, I actually did it. And so then I wanted to be part of your second book as well. And then the third time, I obviously was like, John, why don't we do this together? It's our 20th wedding anniversary. Let's do something different. And so I felt like just sitting together, kind of brainstorming it and reading each other's stories over would be fun. And it really was. Like there's a lot, even though I know my husband very well, but reading his chapter just gave me yet another layer or another perspective of who he is. And so I was excited. I did not want to miss this opportunity.
Yeah, I'm so glad you did it too, because I remember you writing for that first book, how nervous you were, because English is not your first language. And that was your biggest concern coming forward. You were like, oh my gosh, this is so hard for me. And it was fantastic. Fantastic. All of your chapters are, but really, really well done. And I know how nervous you were to launch it each time. So I'm so glad. But did this third time feel more comfortable just kind of writing?
I think the biggest thing that always stays with me was when you and Laura were talking about showing versus telling. And because I think I'm typically trying to do things more in a structured way, and to be able to always think about that, like how can I show this without like telling the story exactly as it unfolded, it made it just so much easier. It's like one sentence that just felt like held really the secret to making it flow much easier.
Yeah, fantastic. So John, jumping to you, when Claudia asked you, do you want to be a co-author in this book? What was your first reaction?
The immediate reaction was no way.
That's
I
true.
probably don't fit into that scene. And I had watched Claudia go through the first two books and have the opportunity. And then when she explained that the focus was, on leaving your legacy,
Yeah.
which is something I talk about pretty frequently in the world of leadership, and I understood that, your passion is helping entrepreneurs change the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, okay, this is something that really resonates. I don't want to miss a chance to be a part of it. So let me dip my toe in that water, the unknown, and see what it's all about. And really glad I had the opportunity to do that.
Yeah. How was it for you actually the writing experience? Like was for many first-time authors, especially in our books, they're
Yeah,
telling a story for the first time.
yeah,
And at the end, they're like, it's almost like a monkey off their back. Like, whew, that I didn't know I had that in me. That kind of, what was your
yeah.
experience with writing it?
I was it was tough for me to get started, to be honest. And I do a fair amount of public speaking, but I've never written before.
Yeah.
So it was a first, and certainly the material that you and Laura shared with us was very helpful in getting started in that. But then once I got through the process, it was a big relief to actually see, okay, I've gotten the word count, I've gotten it on paper, and it felt really good to get that out there. But it was very different from preparation I've done for giving talks in different places.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree.
yeah,
The first time I wrote, I was like, I am not a writer. I am
yeah,
not a writer. But I will tell you this third book, or Claudia, we were saying like show not tell. I just started with dialogue. And I was
Mhm.
like, look at me becoming a writer. Right. So yeah. Fabulous. Okay, so now with the two of you working on your own chapters, what was it like as a couple helping each other explore your chapters? And I suppose you read them for each other
yeah.
and did that because Claudia, I remember on your first book how many people you had read that first chapter. Yeah. So but I feel like this third one was much easier. But what was it like for the two of you, just kind of exploring that piece of art together?
For me, I'll go first. I mean, for
Okay.
me, it was really helpful to get Claudia's perspective because I think my challenge was, the community that of entrepreneurs and soul-based professionals. And I thought, okay, how do I fit in with the group? But I really felt a lot of commonality in the way I talk about leadership with people and developing leaders
Hmm.
and helping them be authentic. And in doing so, having the greatest impact. And then to be able to leave a legacy is what it's all about. So Claudia was really helpful with me editing my material to say, this is what's going to resonate. And these are nice things too, but I would focus on these couple of examples, and
Mm,
that was really helpful for me to get that feedback since she has such a good finger on the pulse of what might resonate best.
yeah, beautiful. I love that. And Claudia, what about you?
I think for me, when I once your chapter was all done, I think like his title about like being authentic and leaving that legacy um as being like the main focus of this book was just in such alignment with who John is. When I was kind of reading it, it was like you really are through and through exactly who you're describing in that book. And that was just it's almost like a circle kind of closed because
Oh,
as a role of a father, as a role of a husband and a community member, it was literally like, you get the same person with the same values. And it just made me just so proud of who he is in all these different roles. And his chapter really is just a mirror of all of that. So it was really beautiful for me to see that.
do
Yeah.
you feel like this writing, you said you were doing it for your 20th anniversary. Do you feel like it like made that mark?
I I might go first this time. I mean, we're still booking that trip.
Yeah.
Like, I want to go someplace fun, but it does open a lot of conversations of potentially doing, certain things maybe together in the future, collaborating in a way where, you know, which really was never really the case. I thought, John's life from mine as far as like business and entrepreneurs is so different, but it really isn't. And I think we have so much in common as far as the values, which also was nice. So it definitely has commemorated that in a way where, it will always be on our bookshelf, always as a sign of in my case of how much we have grown together in with my kind of like challenges and what I'm writing
Yeah.
about, and just getting, to know, not even to know my husband better, but to see how authentic, like I said before, it all kind of comes together. So definitely commemorates our anniversary. I'm very proud and happy that we have done it that way.
Oh, that's so beautiful. John, do you have anything to add to that? That was
No,
kind of good.
it's tough to top that. But, no, it has been a really good experience. And I mean, if I think about it, Claudia talks about thriving with ADHD. And of course, I've watched her on this journey for over 20 years now, and watched her start these businesses and begin the coaching and begin to really share what's worked for her with her clients. So it's really fulfilling. She had a recent speaking engagement as well, and to be in the audience and watch that happen, you see the power of how she's developed personally, and then turned it into a really good, robust business with something meaningful to give. And I found a lot of parallels between the journey. I mean, she's watching me develop as a leader, as a father, as a coach, as a member of the community, and I'm watching her develop as a business person in addition to all the roles she plays in my life and our families. And it was nice to have a chance for the book to be something that brought all that together. And we had a lot of time to share as we were going through the process as well, and some of the highlights. So it's been good for us for sure.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful. When's your actual anniversary date?
April 24th.
April. Okay. So the
Yeah.
20th, the one that just passed or the one that's coming up?
The one that
No, the
just
one,
The
passed
April
was the
that just passed.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
happy 20th. That is spectacular.
Yeah.
And yeah, and the book will be out in September, so you can do something when you get the launch.
There
Because
you
when
go.
you physically get it in your hands, that's like a whole nother day of like, holy crap.
yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I
we'll
want to take
celebrate the
time.
occasion.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say we'll celebrate the occasion for sure.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
those launch parties are fun. So I want to take a little bit of time for you each to tell me, or tell our listeners too, about your chapters. Not giving everything away, but a little bit about your chapters and why you decided to write on whatever the stories that you chose and your titles. Um, Claudia, do you want to go first? I can read your title again. Life Unchained, Thriving When Diagnosed with ADHD Later in Life.
Yeah, so I think that living with ADHD, whether diagnosed or not, but there's a lot of us that are undiagnosed until we're
Correct.
diagnosed later in life. And it is like a chain that's just kind of attached to us where we're in this cycle of, we got this, we can live like everybody else, and then falling apart, because of all the things we're dealing with, emotional dysregulation and disorganization, showing up late, having issues with our financials, maybe potentially losing jobs or messing up marriages, addictions. Like there's so much that comes with it, depression, anxiety, you name it. And if you don't know what you're dealing with, it's just a cycle and we cannot break free.
Mhm.
It's very exhausting. Like I bring this shopping cart example like up all the time, which I can mention again after. But it is just so exhausting. It's just like that chain that's we seem to not be able to break. And I do now believe, because I've worked really hard on it, that life we can be unchained. So life unchained for me is like just really break free from this cycle. And I think I have so as you know, we have moved. We're now living in Switzerland, and even in this new place where I've met all these new people, somehow I keep meeting people that are diagnosed with ADHD later in life, and the story is oftentimes the same. Like I just said, marriage is falling apart, all of this. But then the really interesting thing is that once we know what we're dealing with, people often go two ways. They embrace it and they learn how to thrive, or they're like ADHD becomes the excuse for everything. And that is just not okay.
Mhm.
So there is a way to live with it and thrive with it. And also what comes with the diagnosis later in life is this relief of like, oh my gosh, that's why I'm the way I am.
Yeah.
And that feels really good until this wave of like resentment comes and like, wait a second, what who could I have become had I known earlier? You know, who would I have not lost in my life? What would my finances be had I known earlier? So um I would just want to give these people like me just a way to thrive. And I think I have learned a lot and I'm happy to share, you know, how it's possible.
Yeah, beautiful. I like that. I was also diagnosed very late in life. And the only reason I even found out was my kids were diagnosed and they're like,
Ah,
it's genetic. What?
yeah,
But I just thought they had my traits. They were just like me. I didn't know it was a thing. Like I was
I
like, we're
know.
all like that, aren't we?
No. And I think growing up,
Right.
like
Yes.
our age, when we are have ADHD as a child, where there's nobody that even thought of like, you know, it was more like,
Especially women.
why are you doing this? Why
Yes.
have you not? Like, don't. My favorite is like when my mom used to say, well, just put your keys always in the same place. Yeah, that's a great idea. It just doesn't work. So it's like that disconnect, right? Like we
Yeah.
now learn how to talk to people with ADHD potentially, but for us, it was this, why this? Why have you not done that?
Yeah.
And these
Very
why
interesting.
questions can be very triggering. So that's the kind of one thing I would leave people with in general is if you ask any questions, even your kids or your spouse, like how or what, it's just much more, you know, it's much better than why. It just feels like when you ask questions that start with why, people feel right away like they have to defend themselves.
Defensive. It's very good advice. A lot of the people I work with have ADHD, and I didn't pick up with that right away, but I think they're attracted to me because I think like they
Yeah.
do. And a lot of the structure that I've always taught myself, I taught my kids, not knowing, but this is how I keep track of things. And learning that my concept of time is like very warped, but I know that. So when I meet with like other entrepreneurs, we never use that as a performing indicator is never time. So we don't
Mhm.
ever trade time for money. It's like, well, how many people are we talking to? Like how many, like other things we measure, but never time. Because time is like this illusion for ADHD people.
Oh
Like
yeah,
it's just this unknown. Yeah. So we have to use things that just make sense. And that's
exactly.
okay. Yeah,
Exactly.
fabulous. And I will mention that your other chapters were also about um um I'm thinking one of them was called the broken brain or something, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it
Your
all
first.
kind of started with, I think it all started kind of like with discovering what was going on because I think, and I'm not a doctor and I want to make this very clear that that might not be true for everybody, but I was struggling with depression like extremely, like to the point where, I mean, you've met my husband, what's not to love? I have three amazing kids, and I didn't want to live anymore. Like I just could not,
Yeah.
I couldn't handle life, and it was bringing me to the brink of like, yeah, like suicide. And
Yeah.
so, and then the first person I wanted to talk to was like, oh, we're not doing really labeling because then you make it an excuse. And I think that's just not right for everyone because I wanted
Right.
to know what I'm dealing with and start putting stuff in place. So it was kind of like the three chapters were really a series of
Yes.
how the
That's what I was
whole
gonna say.
exactly.
Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful series watching your growth.
Yeah.
Right. Even though I know you personally, reading your chapters is like a whole deeper level that just doesn't come up in normal conversation. Right. It doesn't come up in our relationship. So it was so beautiful to see those three pieces come together from, and being so vulnerable in the first chapter to, I felt your third chapter was actually kind of funny. Not funny, but the
I
way
know
you're
it's
just
very
like, hey, phone's in the fridge. This is, you're
exactly
just
yeah.
like, yeah,
One of
yeah.
my other chapters was when he put the phone in the microwave. So you get a little bit of everything.
Yeah. So it was a beautiful growth over these 3 years as well, which I love and appreciate that you share your story so beautifully. So thank you for that.
I think it can be like the day I described in the chapters is entertaining. But I think when we take a step back and then really acknowledge, like, well, okay, was kind of funny, but how else does it, where else does it show up? And it really can destroy. It can, I think, and I wrote this in the chapter, and I mention this often in my coaching sessions in that speaking engagement. If not managed properly, ADHD can literally leave a path of destruction. And by that, I don't mean just like our life, but it can affect our children, it can affect our relationships, our marriages, and it's dangerous. I mean, it can be fun and funny, but it can be dangerous,
I
literally,
agree.
and us into depression and anxiety and
Yeah.
things like.
I feel like social media also feeds into that.
Oh yeah, the worst
Yeah.
for us.
Yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
yeah.
Because
It
it's
will
quick,
lead
it's
us.
rapid, you lose time.
Yeah,
Yeah. And we're shortening our attention span.
just what we need.
Yeah. So I'm always like, Camille, you have to keep reading because if you like keep looking at TikTok to get your information, like this, it's just going to shorten everything for you. Like you have to keep the basics. So now I have time without my phone and things like that to
Very good.
keep those basics. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Claudia. And John, how about a little bit about your chapter, which I felt like dove so beautifully into what a real leader is. Like just beautiful. Do you want to share a
Thank
little bit about your chapter?
Yeah, sure. I think, along the lines of leaving a legacy. And for me, I've spent decades working in the medical device profession, global operations leadership roles. I've had a chance to work with people all over the world. And I think what I've realized is the best legacy I can leave is helping leaders achieve their full potential.
Mm,
And part of that is just sharing your journey. And so, years ago, I learned that by sharing my journey, I was going to be able to help people unlock their own. And this concept of authentic leadership really resonates, and just helping people understand that you don't have to do what I do or copy what you observe elsewhere to be successful. If you want success and you want happiness, the only way to combine the two is with authenticity. So you find your own authentic leadership style with the core values that resonate within you. And that's how you'll be most successful and you'll be happy. And in doing so, you favorably impact lots of people every day. When you think about leaders and what they do each day, they have an opportunity to send people back home from work with either a good vibe or a bad vibe. And that resonates to families, which resonates to schools, and it's that ripple in the water. So I really tried to write about my story to help people understand, here's where I've arrived, and now here's the exercise for you to go through to try to unlock some of those same learnings and hopefully help people develop their own authentic leadership style.
yeah. I will add that each co-author also added a lesson. So after they tell their story, they write a lesson. So it'll help our readers kind of move through that. John, on your leadership, one of the things I loved about your I loved a lot of things, but one of the things I loved about your chapter is I think it really stated that leadership wasn't just a leader in a company or a leader that we think a leader is. We are making impact in people's lives all the time, right?
Yeah.
As a coach, as a teacher, as a parent, you know, because we're dovetailing our life with leadership, and our legacy is that imprint that we leave on people, and we all have that ability to do better. But I think a lot of times we don't think about it, right? We don't think
Yeah.
about this is my legacy because we haven't set the intention of it being so. But I love how a lot of your chapter was just about caring for individuals from an authentic place and just being real. Like
Yeah.
I felt like that chapter was you being you. Like this is who I am, this is how I show up, and this is what I think leadership is. It's you being you, which was beautiful because I believe that that's leadership as well, right? It's
Yeah.
not, there's a very big difference with leading and being a boss.
Huge difference. Yeah, you
Yeah,
can't compare the two. Even
yes,
managing versus leading, very different. And I
absolutely.
think that that people aspect of it is so important. And when you develop the ability to listen well and to connect to people, you start to hear what's not being said, and then you can really make a more meaningful impact with people. And at the end of the day, that's, successful businesses are successful because of the people in the business. And
Absolutely.
people are successful if they have good leaders that help put them in the right roles and give them the right incentives, and all of that is about being authentic. So I do appreciate your perspective on it. And for sure, if people can become just a bit more comfortable being who they are
Mm.
and showing up as who they are, I think that's going to resonate with the people they work with. It'll lead to people being more effective, but also happier. And that's what it's all about, is having a high quality of life for as long as possible. And for me, that's about unlocking authentic leadership for people.
Beautiful. Do you believe that this type of leadership is really the new paradigm in companies? Like, I know they use the word conscious leadership a lot, which I feel is kind of the
Yeah.
same.
Yeah, there's a lot of different material out there, and everybody's got their own twist on it, and it,
Yeah.
it comes across differently. And people talk about the need for humility and connecting and communicating. So some people say it's a softer side of leadership. I
Hmm.
don't know that that's the case. I really think it's getting connected with who you are and what you're all about, and then being comfortable bringing that to work every day, whether that's as an entrepreneur or whether that's as a vice president in a public company, but showing up as who you are, strong communication skills, understanding the value of people, having a real respect for people, and wanting to do good. And
Yeah.
I do think more companies are getting comfortable with that, where they realize that it's not the numbers are what they're accountable for, and that's what the investment community holds them accountable for. But the best leaders in public companies know that the numbers come from the people. And if
Yeah.
they focus on the people and specifically developing leaders, the numbers will follow.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. And I think it's also honoring who people are. Like,
Yeah,
we're not all the same, and we all come from everything from different experiences. There are no two of the same, even though we experience the same thing, maybe
yeah,
it all made an impression on each one of us differently, right? Our
yeah,
perspective is so different because of our past, and
yeah,
really honoring that, and even asking people, how does that feel for you? What do you think around that?
yeah,
And just honoring that. And people have very busy lives too. So I think a beautiful thing, which I'd love to see in the future, which I think is happening, is how I run with my own staff is, you have a job to do in this capacity. You have a job to do, but
yeah,
your family comes first. Like, there's a lot of things that are important to you, and those are important to me, that
yeah,
those get done in your time, your personal time, your family time, your kids get to school, your parents are cared for. All of that is important in our company. That's
yeah.
Yeah. And I'm hoping that life kind of goes around that way. I think when we honor other people, that brings an authentic expression, and people feel comfortable being who they are too. So it's kind of like this ripple effect.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And for me, any conversation I have with people, it starts not about the work, but about what else is happening in their life. And I think
Yeah.
I'm the first one to remind people at all levels of leadership, look, whatever it says on your business card, that's one role you play. It's probably the least important one. So whether
Mhm.
it's husband, mother, brother, father, coach, do those things and do those things well. And if you're at peace with those things and in a good place, your best self will show up at work to do that other role, which happens to be on your business card. But you can't get that job right if the other things aren't being done correctly.
Yeah, I so agree. I
Yeah.
so agree. Claudia and John, I am so glad that you joined us as co-authors, as a team, to celebrate your 20th anniversary. Your chapters were phenomenal, and I'm so glad that you were a part of this entire project and that you've agreed to come on the podcast. If someone wants to get in touch with you after they read your incredible chapters, what's the best way to do that? Claudia, you can go first.
For me, my website is vibranthealthbyclaudia.com/resources, and there will be many ways on how to contact me best or where to go next.
Awesome. John, how about you?
For me, it's best on my LinkedIn profile. I'm John Heller 26 on LinkedIn. And if you miss me there, go through Claudia. She'll track me down for you.
Yeah. And we will track down anyone too. If you can find them, we are happy to do that. All of their bios and information are attached to this in our show notes. If you're in your car, don't look now. You can always go back and look a little bit later. We will always get you in touch with any of our co-authors or anyone on this podcast, exactly. But we will make that happen for you. Thank you so much, the two of you, for being a part of the book and on our podcast today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Camille.
Thank you so much for having both of us.
You're welcome. And thank you for joining me, my listeners, today. If you loved this interview, please share it with your friends and pick up the book in September. You can also join others by checking out soulprofessional.com. As a reminder, a soul professional lives in a higher vibration, has an alternative approach to business, and is here to help repair the world. If that sounds like you, just check us out at soulprofessional.com and have a great weekend. Bye, guys. See you next week.
Bye.